I'm Matt Bichard here at the La Quinta Resort and Club in Palm Springs, California for REITwise 2017, NAREIT's Law, Accounting, and Finance Conference. Joining me today is Mark Van Deusen, Principal with Deloitte. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
It's great. Thank you, Matt.
Now, here at REITwise, you moderated a panel on implementing PATH Act tax changes. I'd like you to give us your thoughts on how some of the issues related to that will impact REITs. First up, the preferential dividend rule.
Preferential dividend rule and the changes that were made to that by the PATH Act were one of the best things that came out of the PATH Act. The preferential dividend rule denies the dividends paid deduction to REITs if their dividends are preferential, if all shareholders are not treated the same. That's an easy rule to articulate. It's a hard rule to comply with in the real world. And what the PATH Act did was to say that for publicly offered REITs, the dividend or the preferential dividend rule would no longer apply. And publicly offered REITs include REITs that are publicly traded and also REITs that have to file with the SEC because of the number of shareholders that they have. The PATH Act, however, did not repeal the preferential dividend rule for other REITs, for baby REITs, for private REITs, and so the rule still exists, and the PATH Act did, for those other REITs for whom the rule still applies, indicate that the IRS had the ability to forgive various de minimis failures of that rule, but we're still waiting to hear from the IRS exactly what failures will be allowed to benefit from that de minimis rule and what will be the penalties for that. So that's one of the things that we're waiting to find out into how to implement the PATH Act is how the new savings clauses are going to apply for the preferential dividend rule for non-publicly offered REITs.
And how did the PATH Act impact REIT spinoffs?
PATH Act had a huge effect on spinoffs of REITs by existing C corporations, and these are the transactions beginning with the Penn Gaming transaction, in which an existing C corporation spun off a REIT in a tax-deferred transaction and then leased back on a triple net lease basis all of the properties that it had formerly owned and now were owned by the spun off REIT. And what Congress decided in the PATH Act was that it didn't want those transactions to occur on a tax deferred basis. So it said that no tax-deferred spinoff could occur if either what's called the distributing corporation, the corporations that's making the distribution, or the corporation that's being distributed is a REIT. And similarly, if any entity was a party to a tax-deferred transaction, tax-deferred spinoff, then they can't make a REIT election for 10 years. So that essentially ended spin-offs of C corporations by REITs, but we're still seeing a number of transactions in which REITs are spinning off other REITs, because those are allowed, even post-PATH Act, to occur on a tax-deferred basis. But a lot of the ones that we're seeing are actually taxable transactions, which can be done in a REIT format in a more tax-efficient manner than occurs with a C corporation spinning off another C corporation. So the C corporation REIT spinoffs are dead.
And an issue that we've talked about in the past is the Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act, which was addressed in the PATH Act. How did those changes come about, and what are the impacts going to be?
One of the things that the PATH Act did is there's an exception from the FIRPTA rules for foreigners investing in publicly traded REITs. That exception applied only if they owned up to 5%. The new rules now say that they can own up to 10%. So I think that is going to make it much easier for foreign investors to take a material investment in publicly traded REITs. Another big change was that the PATH Act created an exception for FIRPTA for qualified foreign pension plans. The idea was to put foreign pension plans on the same footing as domestic pension plans. There's a lot of questions about how that definition is going to apply in the real world, but I do again see that as another mechanism for foreigners to invest in U.S. real estate, which will have a great impact on prices of U.S. real estate. And finally, there were some additional clarifications made around the rules that apply to private or to any REIT that is domestically controlled, because foreigners can sell the stock of domestically controlled REITs without being subject to the FIRPTA tax. So I think on whole, the FIRPTA changes may end up being the most important changes in the PATH Act for REITs.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Matt, thank you.
For more from REITwise 2017, be sure to visit NAREITsREIT.com.